people in certain industries, especially, tech like mine, which is real estate, they tend to historically not have taken women very seriously, right? Because they have been very, very male dominated spaces.
Yeah.
Has that happened with you, where when you started out, people were just not taking you seriously because you were a woman? They were like sexist?
Yeah, that happens all the time. I think especially in trade.
Yeah.
When I deal with a lot of people in smaller towns, people who are in biggest places also, who are in the trading business rather than the very educated knowledge sectors.
Yeah.
So the knowledge sectors are a lot more equal,
Correct.
I find, because what happens is whatever age, gender, background, religion, whatever you may have, at the end of the day, it's about your knowledge and your skill set.
Correct.
But when it comes to the trade, there's a lot more bias. Very often they've never dealt with a woman in business. So you also have to sometimes cut them some slack that you may be the first woman they've dealt with.
Yeah.
And you sort of have to set the pace
Yeah.
of how they treat you.
Yeah, they almost become awkward only.
They
I
almost
feel.
like कि मैडम आई है, पैंट पहनी है, मॉडर्न सी लगती है, हम हैंडशेक करें, नमस्ते करें, हम क्या करें? So you can see that if you keep that little bit of an offended feminist aside,
Yeah.
and understand and be empathetic that the person doesn't know how to doesn't want to offend you.
They just don't know better.
They just don't know how.
Yeah.
Then you have to cut them some slack and be a bit more forthcoming with, making them feel comfortable with doing business with
Yeah.
you. However, if there's a situation where it's just pure sexism, completely give it back.
Yeah.
It's your boardroom, it's your business, teach that man a lesson.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do business with them, even better.
Yeah.
Teach them a very verbal lesson and send them back.
What have you said to someone who was blatantly sexist whilst being educated, where you just felt like, you know what, this is appalling and I'm not going to stand for it?
I think one of the things that's been very offensive to me is that whenever I have found, I've spoken to certain investors.
Oh, they're the worst. They're the worst. Yeah.
And I don't know what charms they get by thinking that, someone from IIT, IIM is going to make them $1 billion business. But if someone comes from a family background, they are just not equipped to grow.
Yeah.
I don't know what that bias is all about. It's like a reverse bias happening. And
Yeah.
in the investing world, like being in a family business is a negative.
Yeah.
And so I've had meetings where someone would say, literally called my company, at the end of the day, yours is nothing but a hobby business.
Oh.
And I said, but guess what? My hobby business made me the richest self-made woman in India under 40. And who are you?
Well done. Well done.
Oh, well, I guess. So I think sometimes you kind of have to also realize that that's a strength where people underestimate you.
Yeah.
So this worked really well for me in my industry, where people would constantly write me off and they'd be like, it's a cute little business.
Yeah.
Or they got lucky with, retail or online or something. And so my competition didn't take me seriously. So we could grow very healthily under the radar.
Yeah.
With constantly people being like, abhi band ho jayega. So, we will finish them off. And by the time we became this really big fish, then they're like, oh shit, now what? So
Now what,
I think if you're a woman and you're, tiny and cute and people underestimate you, you have to have what's called a judo strategy. You have to use your competitor's strength against them. You have to be this very flexible, pliable, fast person who they don't know how to handle at that size and lack of speed.
Yeah.
So everything is not a negative. Sometimes it's good.
Yeah.
When you have guys in a meeting, people are very on guard because they feel like we don't want to tell them too much.
Yeah.
But for women in the meeting, people tend to get into a bit of advisory mode, sometimes a little
Everyone wants to give you gyan.
They give you gyan, use it.
Yeah, use it. I remember sitting in a meeting and I was sitting with bankers. And, I've studied real estate. My first job was in real estate. I've been working in this space now for 9 years. And my younger brother is 2 years younger than me, and he's also fully involved in the business, and we work together, and he's brilliant. And we were sitting, and he's bankers, and he had just kind of joined the business a few years after me, right?
Yeah.
They didn't even look at my face. So they're going on having this conversation with my brother, and it's literally like I didn't exist in the room. And I remember, of course, I was younger also. This is a few years ago. And I was deeply offended. And, once it happened, I kind of let it pass because I was just upset about it. And I was just like, how could they? The next time I was like, you know what, I'm going to tell these uncles off. And I did. And I told them, after my brother left the room that, I just want to tell you very politely that I know maybe it was not intentional, but, you weren't even looking at me and having a conversation. And I think that's very sexist. So I actually called them
Wow,
out.
good for you.
Yeah, and said that to them. And, good on them, they did apologize to me. And they said exactly what you said before, which is that, we're actually not used to working with
Correct.
women.
Correct.
We have one woman in the office, so, maybe subconsciously we don't know better.
Correct.
But, this won't happen again.
Correct.
So I think it's important for women in business also to sometimes just stand up and say, look, I understand maybe you're not used to it, but it's kind of not okay. And if I don't tell you that it's not okay, you'll probably do it again to somebody else who may or may not have the courage to say that to you.
Correct.
So, we have to break that pattern. So you can tell them off and you can do it in a very dignified way as well and get,
And
the
not take
message
it very
across.
personally,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's important to understand the context, right? And that's what leadership is all about. You're dealing with such different people.
Yeah.
You have to have an eye to understand that when is it that they genuinely have never dealt with it,
Yeah.
and when is it when they just want to give you a hard time because of
Correct.
gender,
Correct.
and not take it personally and know what strategy works
Yeah.
for each person.